2560 BC. The Giza Plateau. The sun has not yet risen. Thousands of men wake up at the same time. They have bread. They have beer. In front of them, the greatest structure the world has ever seen rises a little higher every day. History will call them slaves. But they were not slaves. They were paid. They were fed. When they got sick, they saw a doctor. And when they died, they were buried near the pharaoh himself. The last surviving wonder of the ancient world was built by their hands. So who were they? Where did they come from? What kind of life did they live before lifting that stone every morning? That is the story nobody told you. In the 1980s, an Egyptian farmer digging near Giza stumbled upon a cemetery. When archaeologists examined it, they were stunned. These were not the tombs of pharaohs. They were the tombs of pyramid workers. And those tombs changed everything. Inside were broken bones, crushed under heavy loads, shattered by falling stone. But there was something else too. Signs of surgical intervention. These men were treated when they were injured. They were not abandoned. Slaves are not treated that way. So, who were these men? The vast majority were agricultural workers from different parts of Egypt. Every year, the Nile flooded. When it did, the fields were underwater. Farmers had nothing to do. And that is exactly when the state called for them. Was this voluntary? Not entirely. But it was not forced labor either. The state requested a certain number of workers from each village, a system known as corvée labor. Think of it as a national duty. Not a choice, but not chains either. And crucially, it came with something in return. Food, shelter, security, and status. In ancient Egypt, working on the pyramids was not a small thing. To work for the pharaoh meant to work for a god. And for an ordinary farmer, that was a profound honor. Early morning. The sun rises over the Nile. The crews gather. Each team has 8 to 10 men. They have a name. They have a foreman. And they have a reputation to protect because these teams competed against each other. Which crew moved more stone? Which crew built faster? This was not just labor. It was organized, competitive, and deeply human. The foreman assigns the tasks. Some will cut stone at the quarry. Some will drag it on sledges to the base of the pyramid. Some will pour water on the ramps ahead of the sledges. Because the ramps had to be wet. Sledges carrying massive stone blocks would slide over wet clay. We only confirmed this method in 2014, when Dutch physicists proved it through experiment. The ancient Egyptians had been using it for 4,500 years. The average stone block weighed 2.5 tons. The Great Pyramid contains 2.3 million of them. Placing each one required dozens of men working in perfect coordination. One miscalculation and the block falls. One moment of lost focus and a man is crushed. This was not just muscle. It required mathematics, geometry, logistics, and trust. Complete trust in the man next to you. As the morning heat builds, the pace slows slightly. The desert sun is unforgiving. Water breaks are taken seriously. Foremen watch for signs of exhaustion. A collapsed worker means a delayed block. A delayed block means a delayed pyramid. There were also specialists on site. Scribes recorded daily output. How many blocks moved, how many men working, how many injured. These records were kept obsessively. Some of them survive today on ancient papyri, giving us a remarkably detailed picture of life on the Giza Plateau. One such papyrus, the diary of a man named Merer, describes the daily movement of limestone blocks from the quarry at Tura across the Nile to Giza. Let that sink in for a moment. The oldest known individual diary in human history. Not written by a pharaoh, not by a general, by an ordinary foreman, doing his job and writing it down. As the sun set, the crews returned to their quarters. Tired, aching, dusty, but full. And the next morning, it would all begin again. This cycle continued for years. The Great Pyramid took approximately 20 years to build. 20 years. Some men started this work young and were still at Giza by middle age. Some died there and were buried there. They gave the greatest part of their lives to the greatest structure in the world. At Giza, archaeologists did not only excavate the pyramids, they excavated the workers' village too, and what they found was remarkable. Organized streets, bakeries, breweries, butcher shops, a medical area, and long rows of barracks housing thousands of workers. This was not a slave camp. It was an organized city. Let us talk about food. Archaeological analysis shows that workers consumed roughly 4 to 8 liters of beer per day. But this was not about getting drunk. In that era, beer was consumed like water. It was both a source of calories and far safer than Nile water. On top of that, they received bread, onions, garlic, fish, and occasionally beef. Bone analysis reveals that the workers had a protein-rich diet, far better fed than the average Egyptian of the time. As for health care, the bones from that cemetery tell an interesting story. Yes, there are fractures, there are crush injuries, there are clear signs of heavy labor, but there are also healed fractures, meaning surgery was performed, bones were set, and men returned to work. In 2560 BC, that was no small thing. Workers were divided into 2 groups. The permanent crew, skilled stonemasons, engineers, and foremen who stayed at Giza year-round, and the rotating crew, agricultural workers who came during flood season, worked for a few months, and returned to their villages. Both groups worked in named teams. Friends of the pharaoh. The sober workers. These names were carved into the stone blocks themselves. They can still be read today. These men were not anonymous. They had names. They had teams. They had pride. So why? Why did they accept such brutal work? Why did they not complain, flee, or resist? The answer seems simple but runs deep. Belief. In ancient Egypt, the pharaoh was not merely a king. The pharaoh was a god, or at least the bridge between gods and humans. When the pharaoh died, his soul, his ka, needed a vessel strong enough to carry it into eternity. A structure so massive, so permanent, that even the gods would notice. The pyramid was that vessel, which means these men were not building a tomb. They were not even building a monument. They were ensuring that the sun would rise tomorrow, that the Nile would flood next season, that Egypt would continue to exist. That is what they believed, and that belief was not small. It was everything. It is easy to dismiss that from where we stand today. But consider this. People today give everything they have for money, for prestige, for meaning. That man gave everything too. His meaning was simply different. And every morning when he looked up, he saw it growing, built by his own hands, a structure that would outlast every empire, every dynasty, every civilization that came after. Still standing 4,500 years later, who would that man from the Giza Plateau in 2560 BC be today? Perhaps a construction worker, perhaps a factory worker, perhaps a small but essential piece of a large project, someone whose name appears in no headline, but without whom nothing would exist. History remembers the powerful, the pharaohs, the generals, the emperors, but the ones who built that power, their names were carved into stone blocks for centuries, buried under sand, forgotten, until an archaeologist dug them up. The pyramids were not built by slaves. They were built by named, paid, fed, treated, and proud human beings. Men who believed that what they were doing mattered, and it did. Great things rise on the shoulders of ordinary people. It has always been this way. It still is today. We have reached the end of another journey through the dusty pages of history, but the whispers of the past never cease.